By your mid-30s, most people notice three things. They gain weight more easily, they recover slower, and they wake up tired. What almost no one knows is that these all come from the same biological sequence. Around age 30, your body initiates a sequence. Not a sudden change, a sequence. 5 biological systems begin shifting in a specific order, each one triggering the next. And because it happens gradually, about 1% per year, most people don't notice it's happening until they're 7 or 8 years into the process, and it follows the same pattern in almost everyone. This is that sequence, and once you see how each piece connects to the next, everything that's been feeling off will start to make sense.
You're 34, and you notice something strange. You sleep the same hours you always have. You eat roughly the same foods, but your body feels different. Not sick, not injured, just different. Your jeans fit tighter, even though you haven't changed your diet. You wake up stiff, even though you didn't work out. You feel tired by 8 p.m., even though you slept fine the night before. And when you mention this to people your age, they all nod knowingly. Yeah, same, they say. But nobody can explain what's actually happening. They just call it getting older and leave it at that. Except it's not just aging. It's a cascade. And it started years ago with the first system, one that most people have never even heard of. The sequence begins with something called growth hormone. This is the body's primary repair signal. When you sleep, especially during deep sleep, your brain releases growth hormone into your bloodstream, and growth hormone tells your body, rebuild what broke down today. Repair the micro tears in your muscles, fix the small strains in your tendons, restore the cells that got damaged from stress. In your 20s, you produce high levels of growth hormone every night. Your repair system runs fast. But around age 30, production starts declining, about 14% every decade. And this is where the sequence begins. Here's what this looks like in real life. You're 33. You play basketball on weekends, same game you've been playing for years. But now, after games, you're sore for 3 days instead of 1. Your knees ache, your lower back feels tight. You think, maybe I didn't warm up enough. So you warm up longer. Doesn't help. You think, maybe I need better shoes. Still sore. What you don't realize is that your repair system is running slower. Not broken, just slower. And because it's happening gradually, you don't connect it to a biological change. You think it's something you're doing wrong.
Now here's where the sequence gets interesting. When your repair system slows down, it triggers the second change. And this one, most people don't see coming. Your muscles start shrinking. Not because you stopped exercising, not because you got lazy, but because muscle maintenance depends on that repair signal, growth hormone. When growth hormone declines, your body can't rebuild muscle as efficiently as it breaks it down. Every day, your muscle fibers break down slightly from normal use, and every day your body rebuilds them. In your 20s, you rebuild slightly more than you lose. After 30, you rebuild slightly less. The loss is about 3 to 5% per decade. That might not sound like much, but let's be specific. If you have 60 pounds of muscle at age 30, you could lose 3 to 5 pounds of muscle by age 40 without changing a single thing in your routine. And this is where the cascade accelerates, because muscle isn't just about strength, it's about metabolism. Muscle tissue burns calories even when you're doing nothing. Just by existing, every pound of muscle burns roughly 6 to 10 calories per day. So when you lose muscle, you lose your calorie-burning engine. Let me make this concrete. You're 36. Over the past 6 years, you've lost 4 pounds of muscle. That muscle was burning about 30 to 40 calories per day just at rest. Lose the muscle, lose the burn. Now, 30 to 40 calories per day doesn't sound like much, but over a year, that's 11,000 to 15,000 calories. That's roughly 3 to 4 pounds of potential weight gain per year, just from muscle loss alone. This is why people in their mid-30s start saying, I eat the same way I always have, but I'm gaining weight. It's not about eating more, it's about burning less. Your metabolism didn't randomly slow down. It slowed down because the second system in the sequence, muscle mass, declined.
And here's where the psychology becomes important. When you gain weight in your 30s, you don't think, oh, my muscle mass must have decreased. You think, I must be eating too much. I must not be disciplined enough. So you try to fix it with the same strategies that worked in your 20s. You cut calories, you add more cardio, and maybe it works for a little while, but then it plateaus, or the weight comes back. And you think it's your fault. You think you lack willpower. But you don't. You're just trying to solve a biological problem with a behavioral solution, and until you understand the sequence, you're fighting a process you can't see. This brings us to the third system, and this one explains why everything feels harder than it used to. Inside every cell in your body, you have tiny structures called mitochondria. These are your cellular power plants. They take the food you eat and the oxygen you breathe and convert it into ATP, the fuel that powers everything you do. In your 20s, your mitochondria are highly efficient. They produce ATP quickly. Your cells have plenty of energy. But after 30, and this is key, mitochondrial efficiency starts declining. Research shows it drops by about 10 to 20% per decade. Now here's why this matters. If your cells are producing 10% less energy, everything you do requires slightly more effort. Walking upstairs, concentrating on a project, recovering from stress, all of it is pulling from a smaller energy reserve. And this connects directly back to the first two systems. Remember, you're producing less growth hormone, which means slower repair. You're losing muscle, which means lower metabolism. And now your cells are producing less energy at the baseline level. Here's what this looks like in real life. You're 37. You wake up and you just feel heavy. Not sick, not depressed, just low, like your baseline energy dropped a few notches. You used to be able to work all day, go to the gym, cook dinner, and still have energy to do something in the evening. Now, by 7 p.m., you're done. You're on the couch, and the idea of doing anything else feels impossible. And you start wondering, am I burned out? Do I need a vacation? Should I be sleeping more? So you take time off. You feel a little better, but when you go back to your routine, the heaviness returns. You try sleeping more. Same thing. What you don't realize is that this isn't emotional fatigue, it's cellular. Your mitochondria are running slower, and when your energy production drops, everything costs more effort. This is the third system in the sequence, and it sets the stage for the fourth.
Now we arrive at the fourth system, collagen. It's the most abundant protein in your body. It's the scaffolding that holds everything together. Your skin, your tendons, your ligaments, your cartilage, your bones. For 30 years, your body has been producing collagen constantly, keeping your structure strong and elastic. But after 30, production starts declining, about 1% per year. Now here's how this connects to everything that came before. Remember, your repair system is slower. Your muscle mass is decreasing. Your cellular energy is lower. And now, your structural protein, the thing that cushions your joints and keeps your tissues flexible, is thinning. This is why people in their mid to late 30s start experiencing stiffness they never had before. You're 36. You wake up and your knees feel tight. You bend over to pick something up and your lower back feels stiff. You sit at your desk for a few hours and your shoulders ache. At first, you think, did I sleep wrong? Did I pull something? So you stretch, maybe you take some ibuprofen, and it helps for a day. But then it comes back. And here's the critical insight. These changes aren't isolated, they're compounding. Your collagen is thinning, which means your joints have less cushioning. Your growth hormone is lower, which means those joints repair slower. Your mitochondria are less efficient, which means your cells have less energy to maintain the collagen that's left. Every system is connected, and when one declines, it puts more stress on the others. This is why people in their late 30s often say, everything hurts, but nothing is injured. It's not injury, it's the cumulative effect of 4 systems declining simultaneously over 7 or 8 years. And most people never connect these dots. They just think their body is falling apart. But it's not. It's following a sequence. And there's one more system left. The fifth system in the sequence is sleep. And this one completes the cycle. Sleep isn't one continuous state. It's a series of stages: light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep. You cycle through these stages multiple times per night. And the most restorative stage, the one where your body does the majority of its physical repair, is deep sleep. In your 20s, you spend a significant amount of time in deep sleep. But after 30, the amount of deep sleep you get starts declining. Studies show it decreases about 2% per decade. Now let's connect this back to the sequence. Deep sleep is when your body releases the most growth hormone. So when your deep sleep decreases, your growth hormone drops even further, which means even slower repair, which accelerates muscle loss, which lowers metabolism, which reduces cellular energy, which makes it harder for your body to maintain collagen. Do you see it? The fifth system feeds back into the first. It's a loop. Here's what this looks like. You're 38. You go to bed at 10:30, same as always. You fall asleep fine. But around 3 a.m., you wake up. Not because of noise, not because you need the bathroom. You just wake up. And you lie there for 30 minutes, trying to fall back asleep. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Either way, you wake up at 6:30 feeling like you only half slept. This keeps happening, 2 or 3 nights a week, and you start getting anxious about it. You think, what's wrong with me? Why can't I sleep through the night anymore? But nothing is wrong with you. Your sleep architecture changed. You're spending more time in light sleep and less time in deep sleep, which means less growth hormone, which means everything else in the sequence becomes harder to manage. And this is the hidden system that no one explains. Let me show you the complete sequence on a timeline, because once you see how it unfolds, the confusion disappears. Age 30 to 32, growth hormone begins declining. You don't notice it yet because your body compensates, but repair is already slowing. Age 32 to 35, muscle loss begins, about 1% per year. Your metabolism starts dropping. You might notice your clothes fit differently, but you attribute it to diet or stress. Age 37 to 39, mitochondrial efficiency declines. You start feeling more tired, not exhausted, just lower energy. You think it's burnout or poor sleep. Age 37 to 39, collagen thinning becomes noticeable. You wake up stiff. Your joints ache after activity. You think you're injured or out of shape. Age 40 to 41, sleep architecture changes. You sleep lighter. You wake up more. This accelerates everything else because deep sleep is when repair happens. By age 40, all 5 systems have been declining for a decade, and this is when people say, I don't feel like myself anymore. But the sequence didn't start at 40. It started at 30. You're just now feeling the compound effect. So why didn't anyone explain this? Why does everyone just say you're getting older and leave it at that? Because these changes are so gradual that they're invisible in the moment. A 1% decline per year is imperceptible. You don't feel 1% weaker. You don't feel 1% slower. You don't notice 1% less collagen. But 1% per year for 10 years is 10%. And 10% is the threshold where you start noticing something is different. And by the time you notice, you're not at the beginning of the sequence. You're 7, 8, maybe 10 years into it. And now you're trying to figure out what changed, when in reality, everything changed, slowly, systematically, according to a pattern. This is the hidden biology of your 30s. And once you understand the sequence, all those small, confusing changes, the weight gain, the stiffness, the fatigue, the poor sleep, they stop feeling random. They start feeling predictable. And here's why understanding this matters psychologically. When you don't know about the sequence, you internalize the changes. You think you're failing. You think you're lazy.
You think everyone else is managing fine and you're the only one struggling. But when you see the biology, you realize this isn't personal, it's universal. Everyone's growth hormone is declining, everyone's losing muscle, everyone's mitochondria are slowing down, everyone's collagen is thinning, everyone's sleep is changing. You're not weak, you're not broken, you're not doing anything wrong. You're just in a different biological phase, and that phase follows a specific sequence. And the moment you stop blaming yourself, everything shifts. You stop trying to force your body to operate like it did at 25. You stop comparing yourself to your younger self. You stop feeling like you're failing at something everyone else has figured out, because they haven't figured it out. They're just in the same sequence, and most of them don't understand it either. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. Once all 5 systems are in motion, they start reinforcing each other. And this is what makes the late 30s and early 40s feel so different from the early 30s. It's a loop, and once the loop is established, small stresses have bigger effects. A bad night of sleep used to affect you for 1 day, now it affects you for 3. A hard workout used to leave you sore for 24 hours, now it leaves you sore for 72. A stressful week used to be manageable, now it wipes you out for 10 days. Not because you're weaker, but because every system in the sequence is running with less margin. And this is where most people make a critical mistake. They interpret the biological sequence as a personal failing. They think, I used to be able to handle this. What's wrong with me now? But the question isn't, what's wrong with me? The question is, what changed biologically? And the answer is, everything changed. Slowly, over years, according to a sequence you didn't know existed. Let me give you an example. There's a woman named Sarah. She's 39. She used to run 3 times a week in her 20s and early 30s, no problem. But now when she runs, her knees hurt for days. Her energy crashes afterward. She can't recover the way she used to. So she thinks, running must be bad for me now. I should stop. But running isn't the problem. The problem is that her repair system, her muscle mass, her cellular energy, her collagen, and her sleep have all declined over the past 9 years, and her body needs more recovery time than it did before. Sarah isn't broken. She's just operating with a different biological baseline. And once she understands that, she can adjust. This is the value of understanding the sequence. It doesn't reverse the changes. It doesn't stop the biology, but it gives you clarity. And clarity changes everything. When you know that your growth hormone declined, you stop wondering why recovery takes longer. When you know that muscle loss affects metabolism, you stop blaming yourself for weight gain. When you know that mitochondrial efficiency drops, you stop feeling guilty about low energy. And that shift from what's wrong with me to what's happening in my body is profound. Because most people spend their late 30s in a state of confusion. They feel different, but they can't explain why. And that confusion creates anxiety, self-doubt, frustration. Most people think aging happens suddenly. They think you're young in your 30s, and then one day you wake up in your 50s and you're old. But that's not how it works. Aging happens in sequences. Quiet, gradual biological sequences that begin years before you notice them. And for most people, the sequence that defines midlife starts at 30, not 40, not 50, 30. By the time you're 35, you're 5 years into it. By the time you're 40, you're 10 years in. And by then, the compound effect is undeniable. But here's the thing. Understanding the sequence doesn't make it easier. It just makes it make sense. And sometimes that's all you need. Not a solution, not a reversal, just an explanation. Because when you understand what's happening, you stop fighting your own biology. You stop thinking you're broken, and you start living in alignment with the phase you're actually in. This is what Midlife Explained is about. Revealing the sequences, showing you the biology,
connecting the dots between what you're feeling and what's actually happening inside your body. Because once you see the pattern, everything clicks. If this is the first time someone explained why your body feels different after 30, subscribe, because this sequence doesn't stop here. There are more systems, more timelines, more hidden biology that nobody talks about. You're not imagining it. You're experiencing a biological sequence, and now you know what it is.